that's the thing about this documentary. It's like part of it was like, I want to resurrect the reputation of some of these films. It's like you talked about, people have forgotten how great Risky Business is. So part of this is saying, yeah, this is how they made these amazing films that you love, and here's a bunch of films you don't even remember, or maybe you weren't alive to see, that you really should check out because they're fantastic.
I have to ask you, so 1982.
Yes.
I was like 6 months old probably, but I remember for me, 1982 is one of those years that always has kind of stood out to me, of course, like a lot of other people, because, I didn't realize it was such a great year until reading online. I might have even read it in Sci-Fi Universe, actually.
I'm sure we did a big issue where we talked about 1982, because I think it was the 30th anniversary when we did our issue.
Yeah, well, because that was all these great movies that are like my favorite films. They all happened to come out the same year. So there was a Star Trek 2, The Thing, E.T. I mean, just like it was this Poltergeist, Blade Runner. I mean, and it was like insane, the list of movies. And then even
just the weekends. I mean, you look at June 4th and you had Star Trek 2 opening the same day as Poltergeist. Then E.T. opened the week after that. Then, at the end of July, you had a day where Blade Runner and The Thing opened the same day, and Megaforce. And the thing that people don't realize is that Megaforce, which was also a huge bomb at the box office, did better than Blade Runner and The Thing. But, virtually, other than us crazy people who just think it's one of the great bad movies of all time, nobody talks about.
Okay, so I imagine the genesis of putting this together, though, was probably, was it that article that you wrote all those years back, or
I've been obsessed with 82 probably since 82. And back when I was doing Sci-Fi Universe, we did program with the American Cinematheque for I think it was the 30th. Was it the 30th? Maybe the 30th, 25th. We did a huge and I wish I had recorded it, because I could have used all these interviews, but half the people are dead now. But I did a Star Trek 2. We showed Dark Crystal, Cat People, Blade Runner, Tron. We had like 12, 15 people like from Tron. David Odell was there for Dark Crystal. It was like a 3-day super event. And I was like, this is great. At some point I got to do, another festival, because people really, and then I'm like, what do I want to do? A festival? I want to do a documentary, because, most of these people, they're not getting any younger. And there, other than the great sci-fi movies, of which there's so many, Conan the Barbarian too, but it goes deeper than that, because like once you get past The Thing and Poltergeist, there's also Creepshow, Cat People, Halloween 3, which I love. There's a bunch of cheesy stuff like Forbidden World and Swamp Thing, which are also worth mentioning. Then you get into, Teensploitation, and it's like, that was the era of Porky's and Zapped and all that shit. But then you have Fast Times at Ridgemont High, which is, has been called the Citizen Kane of Teensploitation.
But yeah, Firefox, he was saying that like it was marketed so heavily that summer, like much more so than The Thing or any of those other.
Totally. People forget. I remember when it came out in home video, it was like everywhere, like Firefly, and everybody says like, oh, it's Star Wars with airplanes.
But who really remembers it nowadays, though? Like, I mean, it's a definitely like a deep cut for Eastwood,
right? And that's why I was like, we have to, Firefox has to be. I mean, look, one of the biggest movies of the year that was bigger than, Star Trek 2 and probably was like the Top Gun Maverick of its year was Officer and Gentleman, and people don't really remember that well. So I mean, we touch on it, but we, I mean, it's just like the list is so deep, and even the indie films like Janice Missing and Smithereens, Gregory's Girl. I mean, it's crazy, and I mean, we didn't get in The Secret of Nim, so it's like I feel like, oh my God, we left so much out, and the documentary is like 4 hours. Originally, I was an idiot. I thought we were going to do TV, books, comic books, but it's just the death of Elektra that year. Marv Wolfman's Night Force. I mean, there's so many cool things. TV had St. Elsewhere, T.J. Hooker, Remington Steele premiered that year. I mean, it was just like Powers, Matthew Starr, Matt Houston, Police Squad, Cheers. So I'm like, oh, this is going to be amazing. I'm like, even 4 hours, we couldn't even cover like a fraction of this stuff.
you know, 82 was this amazing year, but then I think 83 it really drops like the quality. I mean, there's still some great movies
Huge.
in 83, but there's like
83 is huge. People said, "Oh, you can do 83 yet?" And I'm like, "No, if we do a sequel, it'll be 84. I think
yeah,
84 is a good
84
year."
was the next big year, but like 83 was crazy. Like there were some great movies, but it was like
It's
the quality,
terrible.
like they churned everything. It's like they threw everything out in 82 and didn't keep anything for 83.
No, and it was the year of the big 3D revival. So you had
Oh.
like Space Hunter: Adventures of the Forbidden Zone,
Yeah,
and
Space
then
Hunter. If you watch it on like Blu-ray and stuff, you can see like the parking lot in one point.
oh, I saw it in the theater when I saw it. I remember you see cars in the background. They're on like an alien planet, and you could see the car. That's how bad it is driving in the background. Like at least even the Omega Man, when you know Charlton Heston's driving around, there's like one shot barely you can tell they filmed in Los Angeles on a Sunday, and it was like a car in the like bare. You have to really look for it. But in like Space Hunter, it's like right there. It's like.
So who is your biggest get for your documentary? Because it seems like you
Mm.
guys interviewed a ton of people. Who would you say for you was like the one that you sat back and you're like, holy
Well, I think there are a lot of big ones. Like we got most of the people we wanted. So you know, we got like Ron Howard for Night Shift and
oh
Henry Winkler
really?
for Night
Ron
Shift.
Howard
Oh,
from
yeah.
and Michael Keaton?
No, Henry Winkler.
Henry Winkler, nice. The
Yeah.
Fonz. He
And we
accomplished
got his home
wife's
movies.
hair.
We got his home movies from Night Shift. So we've all this footage nobody's ever seen behind
So
the
I've
scenes
never
of Night
seen
Shift.
Ron Howard talk about Night Shift before. That's
Oh,
crazy.
he's great. It was great. And then, you know, we got Shatner to talk about. I was so appreciative to Bill because Bill doesn't do other people.
Yeah, you got Shatner.
Documentaries.
I'm surprised. I didn't because I didn't think that he was. Yeah, that's
I emailed him, you know, because obviously we're
Free
friends from Free
Enterprise,
Enterprise,
yeah.
and I'm kind of like, you know, look, I know you normally don't do this stuff. I said, you know, I said, but you know, it'd be really great. I'm really excited about this film, and I want to talk to you about Airplane 2 and Visiting Hours as well as Star Trek 2.
Wow, he talked about
And
Visiting Hours.
well, he didn't remember anything about it. He literally didn't remember doing it,
Yeah.
but he gave us some good stuff on Airplane 2. So
Okay.
he was great. I was so appreciative to Bill and doing it. So we got him. John Sayles talks about, you know, ET when it was still night skies, you know, and how it evolved into ET. You know, Leonard Maltin. I mean, God, there's just so many people. That was the fun of the documentary. It was like being able to say, yeah, you all remember Conan because of Arnold and because it's great. But you know, it's like, do you know that actually at the time, this little $1 million Sword and Sorcerer pretty much grossed as much as Conan on a $1 million budget versus a $43 million budget for Conan. I mean, it probably was more profitable when you really think about it than Conan was. So it's, you know, it's wild. And just the stories from Sword and Sorcerer. I mean, it's just, you know, because that's the kind of exploitation movie that, you know, as kids we would see in the theater and, you know, or on home video. And you know, you talked about how your mom was upset when she saw you had the VIP copy of Sci-Fi Universe. I mean, it was like that, you know, you'd have these things on HBO or on home video, and your mom would walk in, be like, "What are you watching?" I remember we were watching The Seduction with Morgan Fairchild one time, my brother and I. She thought it was like porn. She's like, what is this?" Because I worked at a video store, and I'm like, it's like this dopey thriller. And she's like, "Oh, okay. What's the rating?" I said, "It's R." And she's like, "Okay."
I have to ask you though, who did you get from Megaforce? Did you get anybody from that?
Yeah,
one?
Barry Bostwick, of course.
Really?
You gotta have him.
Really?
Oh yeah.
I didn't think he would talk about it.
Oh, he's great. It's
Really?
one of my favorite it's one of my favorite things in the whole movie is Barry Bostwick, because he's so self-deprecating. He's so funny. He does lines from the movie.
Really? I thought he would be all like, "No, I'm not gonna talk about that."
Oh, he's great.
Really?
He has such a great sense of humor about it. We showed it at Comic-Con because we showed some clips. We showed Star Trek 2, a little Star Trek 2, a little Poltergeist, a little of The Thing, and then I said we got to show Megaforce, but I was worried because I didn't think anybody would know Megaforce, and they probably didn't. But it's so funny that people were just dying over the Megaforce segment.
You can keep one 1982 movie, only one of them. What would it be?
Wow, one movie.
Question.
You know, I mean, it's so hard when you talk about ET and all these things, Blade Runner, Star Trek 2. You're gonna laugh, but I would keep The Verdict.
Really interesting.
Yeah. I
Yeah,
love The
interesting.
Verdict. Paul Newman's so
Yeah.
great in it. You know, I mean, look, if it was Desert Island Discs and I could take, I don't know, I mean, it's like, you know, so is it what's more watchable? Because like stuff like Diner, my favorite year, and 48 hours I could watch a
You'd
million
want to hold
times.
on to the performance though from The Verdict. That's
Yeah.
that you don't want to lose that. And how did he not win the Oscar for
Oh,
that
it's
movie too?
crazy. It's
Yeah.
crazy. And we have a whole thing on what did win the Oscar and how insane that was
Oh, it was
given all
Gandhi. I mean,
it was Gandhi, and it's
in brown
absurd.
face. Like
But it's just absurd because
yeah.
Gandhi's not a terrible movie, but it's a pretty good movie, but it shouldn't have won the Oscar in
Yeah.
'82.
When are we going to see the documentary?
Well, the good news is we're finishing it up now. We're in post. So we pretty much have locked picture. We have to do color timing, sound mix, and then we're going to be on the festival circuit in the fall. We just got accepted to a very big festival, which is going to be. They haven't announced their lineup yet, so we're excited about that. We got a couple of other festivals we applied to, so I'm really hoping to hear from some people like Fantastic Fest, which we're out to. We haven't heard anything yet, and we'll see. And then hopefully from there, we'll sell it and get distribution, whether it be theatrical or on a streamer, which would be fine. It was so interesting because I'd been writing for Cinefantastique mostly at that point, and a couple other genre magazines all over the world. But I had pitched Chris Gore at Film Threat about writing for Film Threat, and the short version is he wrote me back some obnoxious email saying, oh well, if you write for Cinefantastique, I don't think that you're the right guy for us, because I was pitching him an Abel Ferrara thing. He said, but I'll read it if you find if you actually want to send it to me, but I'm sure I'm not interested. So I wrote back an equally obnoxious email, and he said, here's the Abel Ferrara interview. It's printed on recycled paper in case you want to throw it out. So so he loved that. So I ended up having me do some stuff for Film Threat, because we were both total assholes apparently. And so he then said, hey, at the time Film Threat was published by Larry Flint. It was one of their consumer magazines, one of their non-adult titles. And he said, hey, I want to pitch them on starting a sci-fi magazine. Do you want to do that? And so I put together this whole proposal. We went and we pitched. It wasn't Larry. It was like his number two. And so they greenlit Sci-Fi Universe. And our whole idea was we were going to be the anti-Starlog. We were going to be the magazine for sci-fi fans with a life, and we were going to be edgy, and we are going to be cool, and we were going to be sarcastic, because there was no internet. So that was like new. Like now I would never do that, because the internet is nothing but sarcasm and snark and stuff.
It was cool though, because it was thick, and it had more, like there was more weight to the stories.
Yes.
Like it wasn't just kind of the puff pieces that you'd find in Starlog. Like, I mean, Starlog, I have an affection for it as well, because I grew up with it.
Oh, me too.
But the fact is, when I would get Sci-Fi Universe, I knew that I could read it, and I could spend a couple of days reading it. I got into trouble though on Christmas of '95, because your issue was it was the barbed wire cover.
Oh yeah.
And it's their boobs hanging out. And then my dad bought it for me. He's like, oh, there you go. And then my mom was like, wow, that's provocative. But yeah.
I remember they were pitching us, and barbed wire on the cover. I'm like, there's no way we're gonna put barbed wire with Pam Anderson. Then they sent me the photos, and they sent me like 40 slides, which at the time was like huge, and they were really hot, and it was like, and they were really cooperative. I'm like, oh, we should put this on the cover. Yeah, that magazine really burned brightly. I can't tell you how many people still, after all these years, come up to me and say, I'm a huge fan of Sci-Fi Universe. I mean, I met a lot of people, in the industry, who would come up to me at like events and things and say, oh my God, I'm such a fan. And I expect them to say, oh, Free Enterprise, or, one of the TV shows I did. And so I love Sci-Fi Universe. And I'm like, oh, cool.
The GoldenEye issue for me, the one with GoldenEye on the cover, was a big one because nobody had gotten as in depth into the making of that movie and like the screen tests and stuff like that, and that he had, you know, tested for Living Daylights, and I remember, like, as a huge Bond fan, that was like that was gold to me, you know. And I would just go back and I'd reread the articles over and over and over again.
Yeah, I look, I'm a huge Bond fan. Obviously, you know, I did the book, nobody does it better, but I remember,
which I've read, and it's great. Yes.
Oh, thank you. I remember, you know, for Cinefantastic, I was doing all their Star Trek coverage, and I begged them when License to Kill was coming out. I'm like, you gotta let me do Bond. And I was so glad, because that was so much fun. So whenever a Bond movie came out, when I was doing Sci-Fi Universe, I didn't do the article. I think it was David Gianmarco and Ed Gross, but I would do all the retrospective stuff, you know, where I get to review all the movies, which was always, you know, I'd love to do.
I did something similar for JOBLO. We have a show, James Bond Revisited, and we did it basically the year leading up to No Time to Die, and it was great, and it did really well for us. And but I've done it like a couple times for the site, you know, in print. Every time a new Bond movie would come out, my opinions always completely changed. And yeah, and then we got to do the junket for No Time to Die, which was insane. You know, that was fun. Thank you very much, Mark. I think Zoom is about to cut me off, but I had a great time.
My pleasure, Chris.
I had a great time talking to you, and hey,
same here.
I wouldn't be doing what I'm doing today if it wasn't for you.
Oh man, that really means a lot. And if you ever need anything or advice or connection or
cool, dude,
just whatever, sure. Please feel free to reach out anytime.